My aunt thought she was being helpful when she invited my ex-boyfriend to my wedding reception. "It's for closure, honey," she said, patting my hand like I was still 12 years old. What she didn't know was that there was already plenty of closure between Marcus and me, the legal kind that came with a restraining order and a police case number. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The wedding planning had been going perfectly until 3 weeks before the big day. I was Ava Lopez, 28 years old, finally marrying the love of my life, Daniel Richardson, after 2 years of dating and 6 months of engagement. We'd met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland where I worked as a freelance graphic designer, and he was this incredibly sweet pediatric nurse who always ordered the same ridiculous caramel macchiato with extra whipped cream. Daniel knew about Marcus, of course. When you're in a serious relationship, the topic of exes eventually comes up, especially when one of them requires legal intervention to stay away from you. But Daniel had been nothing but supportive, never jealous or weird about it, just concerned for my safety and well-being. That's how I knew he was the right person to spend my life with. My Aunt Patricia was my mom's younger sister, and she'd always been the family member who thought she knew what was best for everyone. She was 53, recently divorced, and had this annoying habit of projecting her own need for closure onto everyone else's situations. Patricia had been incredibly involved in wedding planning, which I appreciated at first. She'd helped with venue scouting, tasting menus, and even contributed financially when my parents hit a rough patch with their small business. The problems with Marcus had started about 8 months before I met Daniel. We dated for nearly a year, and what began as a normal relationship slowly morphed into something controlling and frightening. Marcus Chen was charming initially. He was a software developer, well-educated, and came from a good family. But gradually, he became possessive, then obsessive, then genuinely scary. It started with him showing up at places where I was supposed to be, claiming it was coincidence. Then came the excessive texting, the demands to know where I was every minute of the day. When I tried to break up with him the first time, he convinced me we could work through it. When I tried the second time, he started following me. The third time, he began sitting in his car outside my apartment building for hours. The final straw came when he somehow got into my apartment building and was waiting inside the hallway when I came home from work one evening. He hadn't broken into my actual apartment, but he'd somehow convinced someone to let him into the building. Standing there in the dim hallway light, he looked completely unhinged. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled like he'd been sleeping in them, and his eyes had this wild, desperate look. "We need to talk," he'd said, blocking my path to my door. "You can't just throw away what we have." I'd called the police that night. The restraining order was filed the following week. Marcus had violated it twice. Once by sending flowers to my workplace with a note saying he just wanted to apologize, and once by having his friend Jake call me pretending to be someone else, then putting Marcus on the line. Each violation was documented, and Marcus had been arrested the second time. The restraining order was still active when Daniel and I got engaged. It wouldn't expire for another 6 months, well past our wedding date. Marcus was required to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, my workplace, and any events I was attending. I'd specifically informed him through his lawyer about the wedding date and venue to ensure there were no accidental encounters. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was at Aunt Patricia's house, going over final details for the reception. She lived in this beautiful craftsman-style home in the suburbs, and we were sitting in her perfectly organized kitchen with wedding planning materials spread across the granite island. "I've been thinking," Patricia said, pouring herself another glass of wine. "Have you considered inviting Marcus to the reception?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "What? Patricia, absolutely not. You know about the restraining order." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, honey, that was so long ago. People change. And think about it. Wouldn't it be better to have closure, to show him that you've moved on and there's no hard feelings? It might actually help him move on too." "Patricia, he violated the restraining order twice. The police have been involved. This isn't some normal breakup situation where we just need to clear the air." But Patricia had this look in her eyes that I recognized, the same look she got when she decided she knew better than everyone else.
Ava, I really think this could be healing for both of you. What if I reached out to him, just to extend an olive branch? No, I said firmly. Absolutely not. Do not contact Marcus. Patricia, I'm serious about this. She nodded and smiled, but something about her expression made me uneasy. Of course, sweetie, I understand. I should have trusted that instinct. I should have been more explicit, maybe even put it in writing. But I was juggling a million wedding details, trying to finish client projects before my honeymoon, and dealing with the usual pre-wedding stress. I thought one clear no would be enough for a reasonable adult to understand. 2 weeks before the wedding, Daniel and I were having dinner at our favorite Thai restaurant when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I usually didn't answer unknown calls, but with the wedding so close, I was worried it might be a vendor or someone important. Hello? Ava? It's Marcus. My blood went cold. Daniel immediately noticed my expression and reached across the table to take my hand. I hung up without saying anything and immediately blocked the number. Was that him? Daniel asked quietly. I nodded, my hands shaking slightly. I don't understand how he got my new number. I changed it 6 months ago. We drove home in tense silence. I was mentally running through who might have given Marcus my number, but I couldn't think of anyone who would do that intentionally. Most of my friends and family knew the situation and had been incredibly supportive and protective. That night, I called my lawyer to report the contact. He advised documenting everything and said we could file for an extension of the restraining order if the harassment continued. The next day, I got a text from the same number Marcus had called from. Your aunt seems lovely. She's very concerned about your happiness.
That's when I knew. I stared at the text message until the words blurred. Daniel was in the shower, and I was sitting on our bed with my phone in my trembling hands, reading those 14 words over and over again. Your aunt seems lovely. She's very concerned about your happiness. My first instinct was to call Patricia immediately and demand an explanation, but it was nearly midnight. Instead, I screenshot the message, forwarded it to my lawyer, and spent the next 3 hours lying awake while Daniel slept peacefully beside me. At 7 a.m., I was calling Patricia's landline. She was an early riser, always up by 6 for her morning yoga routine. Good morning, sunshine, she answered cheerfully. Getting excited for the big day? Patricia, we need to talk. Did you contact Marcus? There was a pause that lasted too long. Well, I wouldn't say contacted exactly. What does that mean? Did you reach out to him or not? Ava, honey, you're getting yourself all worked up. I simply found his Facebook page and sent him a friendly message just to let him know that you were doing well and getting married and that maybe it was time for everyone to move forward. I felt like I was going to be sick. Patricia, I explicitly told you not to contact him. He has a restraining order against him. He's not allowed to contact me, and now he has my phone number. I certainly didn't give him your phone number, she said defensively. I would never do that. Then how does he have it? He called me last night, Patricia. This is exactly why I told you not to reach out to him. Maybe he got it from someone else, or maybe he looked it up online. You can find anything these days. Her casual dismissal of the situation made my anger spike. This isn't a game, Patricia. This man stalked me. He violated a court order twice. The police have been involved. You're being dramatic, Ava. I talked to him for quite a while, actually, and he seems perfectly reasonable. He's in therapy now. Did you know that? He's really working on himself. The fact that she'd had an extended conversation with Marcus made everything so much worse. You talked to him? For how long? We had a nice chat on Facebook Messenger, maybe an hour or so. He told me all about how sorry he is and how he just wants you to be happy. He even said he'd love to come to the wedding just to show there are no hard feelings. And what did you tell him? Another pause. Well, I told him that I thought that was very mature of him. Patricia, please tell me you did not invite him to my wedding? I didn't invite him exactly. I just said that I thought it would be a beautiful gesture of forgiveness and healing if he wanted to come to the reception, just for a few minutes, to show everyone that you've both moved on. I was pacing around my bedroom now, trying to keep my voice down so I wouldn't wake Daniel.
Patricia, you cannot be serious right now. He has a restraining order. He legally cannot be at my wedding. If he shows up, he'll be arrested. Oh, I'm sure that's all blown out of proportion. Legal things always sound scarier than they really are. Besides, it'll be a public venue with lots of people around. What could happen? What could happen is that my wedding gets ruined and my ex-boyfriend goes to jail. What could happen is that I spend my wedding day dealing with the police instead of celebrating with my new husband.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Ava, I really think you're overreacting. I was just trying to help. Sometimes we need to extend grace to people who've hurt us. I hung up on her. I'd never hung up on a family member before, but I was so furious and scared that I couldn't continue the conversation. Daniel emerged from the bathroom with a towel around his waist, took one look at my face, and immediately sat down next to me. What happened? I told him everything about the text, the phone call with Patricia, her hour-long conversation with Marcus, her invitation to the reception. Daniel listened without interrupting, his jaw getting tighter with each detail. "We need to call the police," he said when I finished. "And tell them what? That my aunt talked to my ex on Facebook? They can't arrest him for a conversation he didn't initiate." "But he called you. That's a violation right there." Daniel was right. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation to the officer who answered. He told me to come in that afternoon to file a report and bring the screenshot of the text message. "In the meantime," the officer said, "I'd recommend changing your phone number again and documenting any further contact." The police station was exactly as depressing as I remembered from 18 months ago when I'd first filed the restraining order. The same fluorescent lighting, the same smell of disinfectant and anxiety. Officer Rodriguez, who'd handled my original case, was still there. "Miss Lopez," he said, shaking my hand, "I wish I could say it's nice to see you again." I showed him the text message and explained about Patricia's Facebook conversation with Marcus. Officer Rodriguez took notes and asked detailed questions about exactly what Patricia had told Marcus and what information she might have shared. "The phone call is definitely a violation," he confirmed. "We'll issue a warrant for his arrest. As for your aunt's involvement, she didn't technically do anything illegal, but she certainly made the situation more dangerous." "What about the wedding? He might actually show up." "We can have officers stationed at the venue if you'd like. Given his history of violating the order, I'd recommend it." The thought of having police at my wedding reception was heartbreaking, but not as heartbreaking as the alternative scenarios I could imagine. When I got home, Daniel was on the phone with someone, speaking in low, serious tones. He hung up when he saw me. "I called my buddy Jake, who works security," he said. "He's going to bring a couple guys to work the reception, just as an extra precaution. They'll blend in with the guests." The fact that my fiancé was arranging security for our wedding because of my aunt's interference felt surreal. 2 weeks ago, our biggest concern had been whether the caterer would have enough vegetarian options. That evening, my mom called. Patricia had apparently reached out to the entire family to complain about how unreasonable I was being. "Ava, honey," my mom said carefully, "Patricia told me there was some kind of misunderstanding about the wedding." "Mom, there's no misunderstanding. Patricia contacted Marcus despite me explicitly telling her not to. She invited him to our reception. He now has my phone number somehow and called me last night." "Oh," my mom's voice got very small. "Oh no. Patricia said she was just trying to help with closure." "Marcus violated his restraining order by calling me. I had to file another police report today. There might be officers at our wedding reception because of this." My mom was quiet for a long moment. "Ava, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was this serious. Patricia made it sound like you were just being stubborn about an old disagreement." "Mom, you were there when I got the restraining order. You saw what he put me through." "You're absolutely right. I'm going to call Patricia right now and make sure she understands how serious this is." But I wasn't sure it would matter. Patricia had a way of convincing herself that her version of events was the correct one, regardless of what anyone else said.
The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Patricia and a voicemail that was equal parts apology and justification. Ava, sweetie, I've been thinking all night, and I realize I may have overstepped, but you have to understand, I was just trying to help both of you heal. I still think there's something beautiful about forgiveness, but I respect that this isn't the time or place. I sent Marcus another message telling him that he shouldn't come to the wedding after all. I called her back immediately. What exactly did you tell him this time? I just explained that maybe I was premature in suggesting he attend and that it would be better for everyone if he stayed home. And what did he say? Well, he was a little disappointed, and he said he understood. Something about her tone made me suspicious. Patricia, what aren't you telling me? Patricia, what aren't you telling me? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Patricia cleared her throat. Well, he did ask for the venue address, but I didn't think it would hurt to tell him since it's not like it's a secret. Wedding venues are public places. My heart dropped into my stomach. You gave him the address to our wedding venue? Ava, it's the Riverside Gardens Event Center. Anyone could look that up online if they wanted to. I wasn't giving away state secrets. Patricia, the address of where I'll be on a specific date and time is exactly the kind of information someone with a restraining order isn't supposed to have. That's the entire point of a restraining order. I think you're being a bit paranoid, honey. I hung up on her again. This time, Daniel didn't even need to ask what happened. My face apparently said it all. She gave him the venue address.
Daniel was quiet for a moment, then grabbed his phone. I'm calling Officer Rodriguez. The next few days passed in a blur of security arrangements and family damage control. Officer Rodriguez confirmed that Marcus had indeed been arrested for the phone call violation, but he'd been released on bail the same day. The police would definitely be stationed at our wedding now. My mom had apparently had a very heated conversation with Patricia, which resulted in Patricia calling me to deliver what she probably thought was an apology, but sounded more like a list of excuses. I understand that you're upset, she said, but I want you to know that everything I did came from a place of love. I genuinely thought I was helping both of you find peace. Patricia, I need you to understand something. Marcus didn't just break up with me badly, or cheat on me, or hurt my feelings. He stalked me. He made me afraid to leave my own apartment. I had to change my daily routines, my phone number, even my grocery store because of him. This isn't about holding grudges or needing to forgive. This is about safety. I hear what you're saying, but people can change, Ava. He seemed so remorseful when we talked. Seeming remorseful and actually being safe are two completely different things. And even if he had changed completely, which I doubt, a wedding reception surrounded by all the people I love most is not the appropriate place to test that theory. Patricia sighed dramatically. Well, it doesn't matter now anyway. He won't be coming. How can you be so sure? Because I told him not to, and he agreed. I wanted to believe her, but everything about Marcus's past behavior suggested that being told not to do something had never stopped him before. 3 days before the wedding, I was at my final dress fitting when my phone rang. It was my maid of honor, Jessica, and she sounded frantic. Ava, I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to panic. What happened? I was at the coffee shop near your old apartment, and I saw Marcus. He was just sitting there with a laptop, and when he saw me, he waved like nothing weird was happening. My hands started shaking. Did he say anything to you? I didn't go over there, but he called out something like, "Tell Ava I said congratulations." It was so creepy, Ava. He looked, I don't know how to describe it, like he was planning something. I told Jessica about Patricia's involvement and the police situation. She was horrified. Oh my God, Ava, what are you going to do? I'm going to get married and hope that the security measures work. But privately, I was starting to consider postponing the wedding. The stress was affecting everything, my sleep, my appetite, my ability to focus on work. Daniel and I had worked so hard to plan this perfect day, and now it felt like it was being hijacked by someone who had no right to be part of our lives anymore. That night, Daniel and I had a long conversation about our options.
We could postpone, he said gently. Move it to a different venue, different date, start fresh somewhere he doesn't know about. But that means he wins. That means he gets to control our lives and our timeline from a distance. We've already sent invitations, booked vendors, bought plane tickets for families coming from out of state. I know, but if postponing means you can actually enjoy our wedding day instead of worrying about your safety, maybe it's worth considering. I loved him for giving me the option, but something stubborn in me refused to let Marcus dictate when and where I got to marry the man I loved. No, I said finally, we're having our wedding. We'll just have really good security. The day before the wedding, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Unknown number again. Hello? It's Marcus. Don't hang up. I should have hung up immediately, but something in his tone made me hesitate. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I wanted you to know that I'm not going to your wedding. Your aunt made it sound like I was invited, but I realize now that wasn't really the case. Marcus, you're not supposed to be calling me at all. I know. This is the last time, I promise. I just wanted you to know that I've been in therapy, like I told your aunt, and my therapist has helped me understand that what I did to you was wrong. I scared you, and I'm sorry for that. Despite everything, he sounded genuinely remorseful. But I'd heard him sound remorseful before, right before he'd violated the restraining order the first time. Marcus, I appreciate that you're working on yourself, but the way to show that you've changed is to respect the legal boundaries that are in place. That means not calling me, not showing up places where I am, and not asking family members for information about me. You're right. I know you're right. I wanted you to know that I hope you're happy. I really do. Thank you. But Marcus, if you really want me to be happy, the best thing you can do is leave me alone completely, forever. I understand. Take care, Avon. He hung up, and I immediately called Officer Rodriguez to report the call. 2 violations in 1 week meant Marcus would definitely be spending some time in jail once they caught up with him. We'll pick him up today, Officer Rodriguez assured me. Try to enjoy your wedding tomorrow. We'll have officers at the venue, and it sounds like your fiancé has arranged additional security as well. I wanted to feel relieved, but something about that phone call bothered me. Marcus had sounded too calm, too resigned. In my experience, that usually meant he was planning something. I spent my last night as a single woman lying awake, staring at the ceiling, and trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. Daniel had his arm around me, breathing deeply in sleep, and I tried to match my breathing to his. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I was marrying my best friend, surrounded by everyone I loved most in the world. I wasn't going to let Marcus or Patricia's interference steal that joy from me. But as I finally drifted off to sleep around 4 a.m., I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go very wrong. The morning of my wedding dawned gray and drizzly, which felt like an omen I didn't want to ignore. I woke up at my parents' house, where I'd stayed the night, following the tradition that Daniel and I shouldn't see each other before the ceremony. My mom was already in the kitchen making coffee, and she gave me a tight hug when I came downstairs.
How are you feeling, sweetheart? Nervous, I admitted, but not about marrying Daniel, about everything else. My phone had been blissfully quiet all morning. Officer Rodriguez had texted me the night before to confirm that Marcus had been arrested again and was being held without bail this time due to the multiple violations. That should have made me feel completely safe, but 18 months of hypervigilance doesn't disappear overnight. Jessica arrived at 9 with the other bridesmaids, armed with mimosas and enough positive energy to power a small city. She'd clearly decided that her mission today was to keep my mind off everything except getting married. No phones during hair and makeup, she announced, collecting everyone's devices. Today is about celebrating Ava and Daniel, period. The morning flew by in a whirlwind of curling irons, makeup brushes, and champagne toasts. For a few hours, I actually forgot about Marcus entirely. I was just a bride getting ready for her wedding, laughing with her best friends and feeling beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the dress or the makeup. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock at a small church downtown, with the reception following immediately after at Riverside Gardens. Daniel and I had chosen the venue specifically because it had both indoor and outdoor spaces, beautiful gardens for photos, and excellent security, though we'd selected it for the beauty, not knowing we'd need the security. At 3:30, we were loading into the cars to head to the church when my dad pulled me aside. "Honey, I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to worry." My stomach dropped. What happened? Patricia isn't coming to the wedding. What do you mean she's not coming? She's been planning this for months. Your mother called her this morning to confirm pickup times, and Patricia said she'd decided it would be better if she didn't attend. She said she didn't want to cause any more stress. Part of me felt relieved, one less thing to worry about. But another part of me felt oddly hurt. Despite everything that had happened, Patricia was still family, and her absence felt like another way Marcus had managed to affect my wedding day. Did she say anything else? Just that she hoped you'd understand and that she'd make it up to you later. I decided to deal with Patricia's absence later and focus on getting married. The church ceremony was everything I dreamed it would be. Daniel looked incredible in his navy suit, and when I walked down the aisle, his face lit up in a way that made my heart skip. For 30 minutes, nothing existed except the two of us, our families, and the vows we were making to each other. The photographer whisked us away for photos immediately after the ceremony, while our guests headed to the reception venue. Daniel and I spent an hour taking pictures in the church gardens, just the two of us with our photographer, Sarah. It was the first time all day we'd been alone together, and the relief of finally being married was overwhelming. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Richardson?" Daniel asked, spinning me around in my dress. "Perfect," I said, and meant it completely. We arrived at Riverside Gardens around 6:30 to find the reception in full swing. The venue looked magical, string lights everywhere, flowers on every table, and our friends and family laughing and dancing. Jake, Daniel's security friend, caught my eye from across the room and gave me a subtle thumbs up, which I took to mean everything was going according to plan. For the first hour, I completely forgot about any potential problems. I was too busy hugging relatives, taking photos, and basking in the joy of the celebration. Daniel and I had our first dance to At Last by Etta James, and I felt like the luckiest person alive. Around 8 o'clock, I was talking to my college roommate near the bar when I saw Jake making his way quickly toward Daniel. They had a brief, intense conversation, and then Daniel excused himself from his group of groomsmen and walked over to me. "Can I talk to you privately for just a minute?" he asked, taking my hand. We stepped outside onto a small patio area where Jake was waiting with one of the police officers. "Mrs. Richardson," the officer said, "I'm Detective Morris. I need to let you know that we've had a development in your case." My heart started racing. What kind of development? Marcus Chen was released from custody about 2 hours ago. There was an issue with the paperwork on his arrest, and his lawyer was able to get him out on a technicality. The world seems to tilt sideways. Released? But Officer Rodriguez said he was being held without bail. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear on your wedding day. We have units stationed around the venue, and we're monitoring the situation closely." Jake stepped forward. "Ava, my guys have been doing perimeter checks all evening. There's no sign of him anywhere near here." "But he could be coming," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're prepared for that possibility," Detective Morris said. "We have his photo, and every entrance is being watched." Daniel squeezed my hand. "What do you want to do? We can end the reception early if you're not comfortable." I looked through the patio doors at our reception. Our families were laughing around tables covered with flowers I'd spent weeks choosing. My grandmother was dancing with my uncle. Jessica was giving a speech at the microphone, probably telling embarrassing stories about me. "No," I said. "This is my wedding reception. I'm not letting him ruin it." "Are you sure?" Daniel asked. "I'm sure, but can we keep this information between us for now? I don't want everyone else worrying." We went back inside, and I threw myself into celebrating with an intensity that was probably slightly manic. I danced with my father, cut the cake, participated in the bouquet toss, and made sure to spend time with every single guest.
If this was going to be the last hour of my reception, I was going to make it count. Around 9:30, Jessica grabbed my arm while I was talking to some cousins. "Ava, there's someone at the front entrance asking about you." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" "One of the security guys came and got me. He said there's a man outside who claims he's family, but he's not on the guest list." Daniel appeared beside me instantly. He'd clearly been watching for any signs of trouble. "Where is he now?" Daniel asked Jessica. "Still outside. The security team won't let him in without talking to you first." This was it. Despite being arrested, despite promising to stay away, despite every legal and social barrier we'd put in place, Marcus was here.
Daniel and I followed Jessica toward the front entrance, my wedding dress rustling with each hurried step. Detective Morris appeared beside us, speaking quietly into his radio. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the music from the reception. "Mrs. Richardson, I need you to stay inside while we handle this," Detective Morris said. "No," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "I want to see him. I want to know what he thinks he's doing here." "Ava," Daniel started, but I shook my head. "I'm tired of hiding from him. This is my wedding reception. If he wants to explain himself, he can do it to my face." We reached the main entrance where Jake and another security guard were standing with a man who definitely wasn't Marcus. This guy was older, maybe in his 50s, wearing a cheap suit and looking genuinely confused. "I'm sorry," the man was saying to Jake. "I thought this was the Morrison wedding. My GPS brought me here, and I saw all the cars." I felt a mixture of relief and anticlimax wash over me. It wasn't Marcus after all, just a lost wedding guest looking for a different reception. "False alarm," Jake said to Detective Morris, who nodded and spoke into his radio again. We helped the confused guest find the correct venue, which was apparently just 2 blocks away. As his car pulled out of the parking lot, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "See," Daniel said, putting his arm around me, "everything's fine." But the moment of relief was short-lived. As we turned to go back inside, Jake's radio crackled to life. "Jake, we've got a situation at the back entrance. Male subject attempting to enter through the gardens." My stomach dropped again. Detective Morris was already moving, speaking rapidly into his own radio and motioning for backup units. "That's him," I said, though I had no way of knowing for sure. "That's Marcus." "Stay here," Detective Morris ordered, but I was already following him around the side of the building toward the back gardens. The reception venue had beautiful outdoor spaces, with stone pathways winding through flower beds and small groves of trees. It was romantic and private, which was exactly why we'd chosen it. Now, those same secluded areas seemed ominous. We reached the back of the building where 2 more security guards were standing near a wooden gate that led into the gardens. One of them was holding someone's arm, someone in a dark jacket who was arguing in a voice I recognized immediately. Marcus. Even from 50 feet away, I could see that he looked different than he had 18 months ago. Thinner, more disheveled. His dark hair was longer and unkempt, and there was something frantic about his movements. "I just want to talk to her," he was saying as Detective Morris approached. 5 minutes, that's all I need." "Sir, you need to stop talking and put your hands behind your back," Detective Morris said. "Wait," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the area until they landed on me. "Ava, please, just listen to me for 1 minute." Against every instinct and Daniel's protests, I took a few steps closer. I wanted to hear what he thought was so important that he'd risk arrest to say it. "Marcus, you're not supposed to be here. You know that." I know, but your aunt made it sound like she said you wanted closure. She said maybe if I came and apologized in person, we could both move on." The mention of Patricia made my anger flare. My aunt was wrong. I never wanted you to come here. I explicitly told her that. But she invited me. She gave me the address and told me what time the reception started. She said you'd mentioned wanting to clear the air. I stared at him, pieces clicking into place. "Marcus, when exactly did Patricia tell you this?" "Yesterday morning. She sent me another Facebook message saying that she'd talked to you and that you changed your mind about me coming." Yesterday morning, after I'd specifically told Patricia not to contact him anymore, after she'd promised me that she'd told him to stay away. She lied to you, I said, my voice shaking with fury. She lied to both of us. Marcus's face crumpled. What do you mean? I never wanted you here, Marcus. I never asked her to invite you. She did this on her own, against my explicit instructions. The realization seemed to hit him like a physical blow. He sagged against the gate, no longer struggling against the security guard's grip. She said you wanted to see me, that you felt bad about how things ended. Marcus, I have a restraining order against you. The police have arrested you twice in the past 2 weeks for violating it. Why would you think I wanted to see you? Because I wanted it to be true, he said quietly. I wanted to believe that there was still a chance for us to at least be civil to each other. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a flicker of pity for him. Patricia had manipulated both of us, playing on his desperation and my trust. There's not, I said, not unkindly, but firmly. There's never going to be, Marcus. What you did to me was unforgivable, and the way you've continued to violate court orders shows that you haven't really changed. I have changed, he said desperately. I'm in therapy, I take medication now. I've been working so hard to become someone better. Then prove it by respecting my boundaries. Prove it by staying away from me completely. Detective Morris stepped forward. Marcus Chen, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order. As they handcuffed him, Marcus looked at me one last time. I'm sorry, Ava, for all of it. I hope you're happy. I am happy, I said. That's why I need you to leave me alone. They led him away, and I watched until the police car disappeared from the parking lot. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind. Are you okay? I'm furious, I said, but not at him, at Patricia. What do you want to do? I thought about it for a moment. Patricia had orchestrated this entire confrontation. She'd lied to both Marcus and me, put my safety at risk, and nearly ruined my wedding reception. She'd manipulated a vulnerable person and endangered everyone I cared about because she thought she knew better than a court of law. Right now, I want to go back to my reception and dance with my husband. I'll deal with Patricia tomorrow. We walked back inside, where the party was still in full swing. Most of our guests had no idea anything had happened, which was exactly how I wanted it. Jessica rushed over as soon as she saw us. Is everything okay? We heard there was some kind of security issue.
It's handled, I said. Marcus showed up, but the police took care of it. Oh my God, Ava, are you sure you're okay? I'm better than okay. I'm married to an amazing man, surrounded by people who love me, and the person who's been terrorizing me for the past year and a half is finally going to jail for a long time. The rest of the reception was perfect. Daniel and I danced to 3 more songs, I caught up with relatives I hadn't seen in years, and we sent everyone home with little bags of cookies that had our names and wedding date on them. As we were leaving, Detective Morris found me to give me an update. Marcus is being charged with multiple counts of violating the restraining order. With his history, he's looking at serious jail time. You shouldn't have to worry about him anymore. What about my aunt? Can she be charged with anything? Unfortunately, no. Lying to someone isn't illegal, even when it leads to them breaking the law. But you might want to consider limiting her access to information about your life going forward. That was an understatement. 3 months later, Marcus was sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of probation with no contact provisions. Patricia sent a card to our new address, which she definitely didn't get from me, with a generic apology and an explanation about how she'd misunderstood the situation. I never responded to the card. Some people don't deserve closure, and some relationships aren't worth salvaging. Patricia had chosen her version of events over my safety, and that was a choice she'd have to live with. Daniel and I moved to a new apartment across town and changed our phone numbers one final time. We've been happily married for 8 months now, and I can honestly say that Marcus Chen rarely crosses my mind anymore. The best revenge, it turns out, is a life so full of love and joy that there's no room left for the people who tried to destroy it. The months following our wedding were blissfully quiet.
But that peace was shattered on a Tuesday morning in February when I received an unexpected phone call at work. I was in the middle of designing a logo for a local bakery when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hello, is this Eva Richardson? Yes, who's calling? This is Jennifer Walsh from the Oregon Department of Corrections. I'm calling regarding Marcus Chen. You're listed as a victim in his case, and I need to inform you that he's being released early for good behavior. The coffee cup in my hand slipped, sending hot liquid splashing across my desk and keyboard. What do you mean released early? He was supposed to serve 18 months. He served 14 months and has been approved for early release due to exemplary behavior and completion of anger management and therapy programs. He'll be released tomorrow morning. I felt like I was going to be sick. Tomorrow? That's it? No warning? No preparation time? I apologize for the short notice. The paperwork was just finalized yesterday. Mr. Chen will be on strict probation with a no-contact order that remains in effect for the next 2 years. After I hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen for 20 minutes, unable to focus on anything. Daniel was at the hospital working a 12-hour shift, and I didn't want to call him with this news while he was trying to take care of sick children. Instead, I called Detective Morris, who'd stayed in touch periodically to update me on Marcus's case. Mrs. Richardson, I was planning to call you this afternoon. I just got the notification myself. Is this normal, getting out 4 months early? Unfortunately, yes. The system is overcrowded, and nonviolent offenders with good behavior records often get early release. The important thing is that all the protective orders remain in place. But what if he violates them again? Then he goes right back to prison, and this time there won't be any early release options. Look, I know this is scary, but Marcus served real time. Prison changes people, and not always for the worse. Sometimes it's the wake-up call they need. I wanted to believe that, but 14 months of anger management classes couldn't erase 18 months of stalking behavior and multiple restraining order violations. That evening, I broke the news to Daniel over dinner. His reaction was immediate and protective. "We're changing our phone numbers again," he said, "and maybe we should consider moving." "Daniel, we just settled into this apartment. We love this neighborhood." "I love this neighborhood too, but I love your safety more." We spent the evening researching home security systems and discussing whether we needed to take any immediate precautions. I felt angry that we were right back to living in fear, making decisions based on what Marcus might or might not do. 3 days passed without incident. I was starting to think that maybe Detective Morris was right. Maybe prison had been the reality check Marcus needed. Then I came home from grocery shopping on Friday afternoon to find a manila envelope wedged under our apartment door. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. My hands shook as I recognized the handwriting. "Dear Ava," it began, "I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I need you to know that I understand now what I put you through. Prison gave me a lot of time to think about my actions and how they affected you. I'm not writing this because I want anything from you. I just want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry and I'm committed to staying out of your life. I've moved to Seattle and started fresh there. You'll never see me again. I hope you can find peace knowing that. Marcus." The letter was postmarked from Seattle 3 days earlier, which meant he'd written it almost immediately after being released and driven straight to a different state. That should have been reassuring, but instead, it felt like one final violation. I called Detective Morris immediately. "He's not supposed to have any contact with you whatsoever," Detective Morris confirmed. "Even a letter apologizing is a violation of his probation terms." "But he says he's moved to Seattle." "Doesn't matter. I'll contact his probation officer and let them know. They'll issue a warrant and Seattle PD will pick him up." "Detective Morris, can I ask you something honestly? Do you think he's really changed?" There was a long pause. "Mrs. Richardson, in my experience, people who violate restraining orders multiple times don't usually change overnight, even with therapy and jail time. The fact that he wrote you this letter, even with good intentions, shows that he still doesn't fully understand boundaries. Someone who truly respected your wishes would have stayed completely silent."
That weekend, we got confirmation that Marcus had been arrested in Seattle and would be returned to Oregon to serve the remainder of his original sentence, plus additional time for the probation violation. But the letter had unsettled me in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't threatening or manipulative like his previous communications. It actually seemed sincere, which somehow made it worse. It meant he was still thinking about me, still felt entitled to communicate with me, even when he genuinely believed he was doing the right thing.
2 weeks later, I was working late at a coffee shop downtown when a woman approached my table. She was probably in her early 40s, well-dressed, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she was about to do something she'd been talking herself into for a while. "Excuse me, are you Ava Richardson?" I immediately went on high alert. "Who's asking?" "I'm Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister. Could we talk for a few minutes?" My first instinct was to leave immediately, but something about her demeanor made me pause. She looked exhausted and genuinely distressed. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said carefully. "Please, I just need 5 minutes. I know about the restraining order and everything that happened. I'm not here to defend my brother or ask you to forgive him." Against my better judgment, I gestured to the chair across from me. 5 minutes. She sat down and immediately started talking, as if she'd rehearsed what she wanted to say. "I want you to know that my family had no idea how serious things had gotten until Marcus was arrested the first time. He told us you two had broken up and that you were being dramatic about it, but he didn't tell us about the stalking or the restraining order." "Okay," I said, not sure where this was going. "When we found out the truth, we were horrified. My parents cut off contact with him completely. I tried to maintain a relationship because he's still my brother, but I also made it clear that his behavior was unacceptable." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I visited him in prison last month and I'm worried. He talks about you constantly. Not in a threatening way, but like he's obsessed with proving to you that he's changed. He's convinced that if you could just see how much therapy he's done and how sorry he is, you'd forgive him." My blood ran cold. What exactly did he say? "He asked me to look you up on social media. He wanted to know if you seemed happy, if you were still married, where you were working. I refused, but I'm worried he might ask someone else or try to find out for himself when he gets out again." "He's not getting out again. He violated his probation." "He'll serve the additional time, but eventually he will be released, and I don't think prison is actually helping him understand that he needs to leave you alone completely. If anything, it's giving him more time to obsess." We talked for another 10 minutes, and by the end of the conversation, I had a clearer picture of Marcus's mental state. According to Sarah, he'd become fixated on the idea of redemption and closure, convinced that making amends to me was essential for his recovery. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just thought you should know what you're dealing with, and I want you to know that if he ever contacts me asking about you, I won't help him." After Sarah left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, processing the conversation. The most disturbing part wasn't that Marcus was still thinking about me. I'd expected that. It was that he'd convinced himself that his continued obsession was part of his healing process. That night, Daniel and I had a serious conversation about long-term safety planning. "Maybe we should consider that restraining order that never expires," Daniel suggested. I didn't know that was an option. Detective Morris mentioned it once. For cases where someone has repeatedly violated orders, they can petition for a permanent one. The next morning, I called my lawyer to explore the permanent restraining order option. The process would be complicated and expensive, but given Marcus's pattern of behavior and his sister's warning about his current mindset, it seemed like the right precaution. As I filled out the paperwork in my lawyer's office, I reflected on how much of my adult life had been shaped by one person's inability to accept rejection. Marcus had influenced where I lived, how I communicated, who I trusted, and how I moved through the world. Even from prison, he was still affecting my decisions. But I was done being a victim of his obsession. It was time to take every legal measure available to ensure that my future with Daniel would be free from Marcus's interference once and for all. The permanent restraining order hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in April, exactly 2 years after my wedding. I sat in the same courthouse where I'd originally filed the temporary order, but this time I felt different, stronger, more resolved. My lawyer, Rebecca Torres, had prepared an extensive file documenting Marcus's pattern: the original stalking incidents, the multiple violations, the prison sentence, the probation violation with the letter, and the concerning information from his sister. The judge will want to hear directly from you about why you believe a permanent order is necessary, Rebecca explained as we waited outside the courtroom. Focus on the pattern of escalation and the fact that even incarceration didn't stop his attempts to contact you. Marcus wasn't present, he was still serving his extended sentence, but his public defender was there to argue against the permanent order. A young man who looked barely out of law school, shuffling through papers with the resigned air of someone who knew he was fighting a losing battle. Judge Patricia Hendricks, the irony of her first name wasn't lost on me, reviewed the case file before calling me to testify. As I walked to the witness stand, I thought about how far I'd come from the terrified woman who'd first sought legal protection 3 years ago. "Mrs. Richardson," Judge Hendricks began, "can you explain to the court why you believe a permanent restraining order is necessary in this case?" I took a deep breath and began speaking. I told her about the escalating pattern of Marcus's behavior, how each legal consequence seemed to only reinforce his belief that he was the victim of an unfair system. I described the letter he'd sent immediately after his release, framing his continued contact as an attempt at healing rather than another violation. "Your Honor, what concerns me most is that the defendant has reframed his obsession as recovery. According to his own sister, he believes that making amends to me is essential for his mental health. This suggests that he will continue attempting contact regardless of legal consequences, because he's convinced himself that his need for closure trumps my right to safety." Judge Hendricks nodded thoughtfully. "And what about your aunt's role in these events? Have there been any consequences for her actions?" "No legal consequences, Your Honor, but I've had no contact with her since my wedding day. Some boundaries have to be absolute." The public defender's argument was brief and half-hearted. He acknowledged his client's history of poor judgment, but suggested that the existing legal framework was sufficient to protect me. Judge Hendricks deliberated for less than 5 minutes before granting the permanent restraining order. Mr. Chen has demonstrated a persistent inability to respect boundaries, even when faced with serious legal consequences. The evidence suggests that standard protective measures are insufficient in this case. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't have to worry about renewal dates or expiration timelines. The protection was permanent. Rebecca and I celebrated with coffee at a nearby cafe, where she shared some statistics that put my experience in perspective. "You should know that permanent restraining orders are rarely granted," she said. "Most judges are reluctant to impose them unless there's clear evidence of escalating danger. Your case was unusual in its documentation and the defendant's repeated violations. What happens if he violates this one? Automatic felony charges and significant prison time. But more importantly, there's psychological research suggesting that permanent orders are actually more effective at deterring future contact. Something about the finality of it seems to break through the obsessive thinking patterns." 6 months later, I received a call from Detective Morris with news I'd been both expecting and dreading. "Marcus is being released next week," he said. "He served his full sentence this time, and he'll be on probation for 3 years with strict no-contact provisions." "Any word on where he's planning to go?" "His probation officer says he's moving to Denver to live with a cousin. Apparently, he's lined up a job with a tech company there that specializes in hiring people with criminal records." The fact that Marcus was moving even further away should have been reassuring, but I'd learned not to take anything for granted where he was concerned. "Detective, can I ask you something? In your professional opinion, do you think he'll try to contact me again?" "Honestly, I think the permanent restraining order changed something. His lawyer told me that when Marcus found out about it, he seemed genuinely shocked, like it was the first time he understood that his behavior had permanent consequences." 2 years passed without incident. Daniel and I bought a house in a different part of Portland, started talking seriously about having children, and built a life that felt genuinely secure. I rarely thought about Marcus anymore, except when filling out background check forms that asked about restraining orders. Then, on a sunny Saturday in June, I was gardening in our front yard when a car pulled up to the curb. My hands froze on the weeding tool as I recognized the license plate, Washington State, which could mean anything, but my body's alarm system activated immediately. A woman got out of the car, and it took me a moment to recognize Sarah Chen. She looked older, more tired than when I'd met her at the coffee shop years earlier. "Ava, I'm sorry to show up like this," she called from the sidewalk, maintaining a respectful distance. "I tried calling your old number, but it was disconnected." Daniel appeared in the doorway behind me, and I could feel his protective energy even from across the yard. "What do you need, Sarah?" I asked. "I wanted to tell you that Marcus died last month, car accident in Denver. I thought you should know." The news hit me like a physical blow, not because I felt sad, but because I felt nothing at all. No relief, no closure, no sense of justice served. Just a strange emptiness where I'd expected some kind of emotional response. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, and meant it. Whatever Marcus had put me through, he was still her brother. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "When we were going through his things, we found journals, hundreds of pages about you, about what happened, about his regrets. His therapist said it was part of his treatment, but..." She trailed off, and I understood what she wasn't saying. Even in death, Marcus had been obsessing over me. "Sarah, I appreciate you coming to tell me, but I don't want to know about the journals. That part of my life is over." She nodded, looking relieved. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I thought you deserved to know he was gone." After she left, Daniel and I sat on our front porch swing, processing the strange turn of events. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Weird," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel more something, relief maybe, but mostly I just feel like this chapter that's been hanging over us is finally closed." "Are you glad she told you?" I considered this. "Yeah, I think so. It would have been worse to find out some other way, or to spend years wondering if he might show up again." That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked up Aunt Patricia on social media. She was still living in the same house, still posting motivational quotes about forgiveness and healing. Her profile showed photos from recent family gatherings, cousins' weddings, holiday parties, birthday celebrations that I should have been part of. I felt a flicker of sadness for the relationship we'd lost, but no regret about the boundary I'd maintained. Patricia had chosen to prioritize her own need to be helpful over my safety, and that choice had consequences that extended far beyond my wedding day. Daniel found me looking at her photos and sat down beside me on the couch. "Any second thoughts?" "No," I said, closing the laptop. "Some people don't get to be part of your story anymore once they've shown you who they are." 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. As I sat in the doctor's office looking at the ultrasound image of our baby, I thought about how different this child's life would be from mine. They would grow up in a world where their parents had learned hard lessons about boundaries, safety, and the importance of trusting your instincts about people. Now, as I write this story, with my 6-month-old daughter sleeping in her crib upstairs, I can honestly say that the years of fear and legal battles were worth it for the peace we have now. Marcus's death didn't give me closure. I'd already found that through therapy, legal protection, and building a life filled with people who respect my boundaries. The real lesson wasn't about Marcus or even about Patricia. It was about learning to trust my own judgment, to prioritize my safety over other people's comfort, and to understand that some relationships aren't worth preserving when they come at the cost of your well-being. If you're dealing with someone who won't respect your boundaries, know that you're not overreacting, you're not being dramatic, and you don't owe anyone access to your life. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to close the door completely and never look back. The best revenge, as I learned, really is a life so full of love and joy that there's no room left for the people who tried to destroy it. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.